Hello everyone. In this video I will show you how to create this simple Java application using Netbeans. So this application allows us to create new clients and to add them into this table. Also this application is dynamic, so if I increase the width, we can see that the width of this table will be increased. Also if I increase the height, we can see that it is dynamic. Now let's create a new user. So if I don't provide all the information and I click on add, I will obtain this error message. So it is required to provide all the information. So let's click on OK and let's provide the address. Now let's add this new client. And we can see that this client has been added into this table. Let's add a new client. Now if I click on this delete button, I will obtain this error. This is because I did not select any row to delete. Now let's delete this row, so let's select it and let's click on delete. And you can see that the row has been deleted. Also the data of this table will not be lost when we close this application, because the data will be saved into a file, and when we start the application again, we will find the data again. So let's close the application and let's open it again. And we can see that the data has been saved. Now let's close this application and let's create it again using Netbeans. So with Netbeans, let's create a new project. So I will create a new Java project with Ain't. So let's select Java with Ain't and let's select Java application. Now let's click on next. So I will call this application Java dashboard. Also, I don't need to create the main class, so I will uncheck this box. Now let's click on finish. So the project has been created and it is empty. Now let's create a new Java class. So I will select Swing GUI Forms. Then I need to create a new GFrame. So let's select GFrame form. Now let's click on next. So I will call this class mainFrame. And let's click on finish. So this is the user interface, and if we want to see the source code, we have to click on source. And this is the source code. Now let's go back to the designer and let's increase the size of this interface. Now I need to modify the background color of this frame. So to do this, I need to add a panel. So let's drag and drop a panel. And let's provide this panel with all the size of the frame. Now we can modify the background color of this panel. So we need to modify the background property. So we need to click on this button. And here we can select this color, for example. Now let's click on OK. And we can see that the background color has been modified. Now let's add a label. Let's provide it with the full width. Now let's modify the text property. And I will write list of clients. Let's hit enter. And we can see that the text has been modified. Now let's modify the font of this text. So we need to modify the font property. And you can see that the font has been modified. Also, I want this text to be in the center. So let's modify the horizontal alignment property. And let's select center. Also, I want to provide this label with an icon. So let's go to the navigator. And let's go to the website flat icon. So this is the website. So let's click on this link. So I need to download some icons. Let's select this one. Let's select a small size. And let's click on free download. So I will save it. And I will save it on the desktop. Also let's download other icons. So let's download this icon. I need a small size, and let's click on free download. Also, I need the clear icon, so I will download this icon. And finally, I need the delete icon. So let's download this one. Now let's go back to our application. So to add the icon to this label, I have to find the icon property, and let's click on this button. So I want to import the icon to my project. So let's click on import to project, and my icons are available on the desktop. So let's select the group and let's click on finish. Now let's click on OK. And we can see that this icon has been added to this label and also to the project. Now let's add a new panel that allows us to add new clients. So let's drag and drop a new panel. Let's provide it with a full high. Now I need this panel to be transparent. So let's find the opaque property. And let's uncheck this box. Now I need to provide this panel with a title. So let's add a border to this panel. So this is the border property. Let's click on this button and let's select the titled border. So let's provide it with a title. Let's say new client. Also, let's modify the font of this title. And let's click on OK. Now let's add some labels and some text fields to this panel. Now let's add two buttons at the bottom of this panel. So let's drag and drop two buttons. We can also increase the width of these two buttons. Now let's modify the text of these two buttons. So for the first button the text will be add, and for the second button the text will be clear. Also, I want the width of these two buttons to be the same. So let's select these two buttons simultaneously using the control button. And let's make a right click on one of them. Now let's go to same size and let's select same width. Now the two buttons have the same width. So let's put them at the center. Also, let's modify the font of the different fields. So let's select all of them. And let's modify the font property. So this is the font property. Let's click on this button and let's modify the font. Let's click on OK. And you can see that the font of the different fields have been modified. Now let's modify the object name of the different text fields. So let's select this first text field and let's go to code. Then let's modify the variable name. So I will call it TF for text field name. Let's hit enter. And we can see that the variable name has been modified. Let's do the same thing with the other text fields. So let's select this one and let's modify the variable name. Let's call it TF email. Let's hit enter. Let's do the same thing with this one. Also, let's modify the variable name of these two buttons. So let's select the first button and let's call it btn add. Then the second button, I will call it btn clear. Now let's add an icon to these two buttons. So let's select the first button. Let's go to properties. Now let's go to icon and let's click on this button. So let's import a new icon. Let's select add and let's click on finish. Now let's click on OK. And you can see that the icon has been added. Now let's select the second button. Let's click on this icon property and let's import the new icon. So it will be eraser. Let's click on finish, then OK. Now let's create the delete button. Let's increase the width a little bit and let's modify the text. Also, let's modify the font. And let's add an icon. Now let's add a table. So let's go to this palette and let's find the table, which is this one. Let's drag and drop it. Now I need to modify the title of the different columns. Also, I need to remove the different rows. So let's make a right click, then table contents, then let's go to columns. In my case, I only need 4 columns, so I don't need to add a new column. Now let's select the first column and let's modify its title. So let's call it name. Let's hit enter. Let's select the second column and let's modify the title. So it will be email. Now let's select the third column and let's modify the title. It will be phone. And finally, let's modify the title of the fourth column. So it will be address. Now let's go to rows and let's delete these rows. Now let's click on close. For the moment, this table is called JTable1. I want to modify the variable name, so let's go to code and let's modify the variable name. I will call it table clients. Let's hit enter. Now let's modify the font. So let's go to properties. Then let's find the font property, which is this one. Let's click on this button. Then let's select the font. Now let's adjust the dimension of this interface. Also, let's modify the name of this button. So I will call it btn delete. Now let's take a look on the source code. So this is the source code, and here we have the different variables. So these variables are global variables because they are declared in the class, but I only need the text fields and the JTable to be global variables. The other variables should be local. So let's make them local. Let's go to the design. Let's select this button. Let's go to code, and let's select this checkbox to make this button local variable. Also, let's select the other components. This is gpanel 1, and this is the gscroll pan. Now let's take a look on the source code, and this time only the text fields and the JTable are declared as global variables. Now let's go back to our designer, and let's add a listener to the add button. So let's make a double click on this button. So this method will be executed when we click on the add button. What I want to do here is to read the text of the different text fields and to add it to the table. So let's do this. Now let's check if there is any empty field. So if any field is empty, we have to display an error message. Also, we need to import this class. So let's click on this error icon and let's add the import. If all the fields are not empty, we have to add a new row to the table. So to add a new row to the table, we need first to obtain the model, and then we need to add the row to this model. But here this class is not recognized, so we need to import it. Then we need to make all the fields clear. Now let's go to the designer and let's add a listener to this clear button. So this method will be executed when we click on the clear button, and what I want to do here is to make all the text fields clear. So let's do this. Now let's add a listener to the delete button. So first let's obtain the selected row of the table. If no row is selected, we have to display an error. Otherwise, we need to delete the row from the table. Now I need to save the data of the table when I close the application. So let's add a listener to the frame that is executed when the frame is closed. So let's go to the designer. Let's make a right click on the JFrame, then events, then window closing. So this method will be executed when we close the application. What I want to do here is to save the data of the table. So first let's read the data of the table. Then let's import the vector class. Then let's save this object into a file. Now we need to import these two classes. So this is the name of the file that will contain the data of our table. Also, I need to read this file to fill the table when we start the application. So let's add a new method that will be executed when we start the application. So let's go to the designer, then let's make a right click on the JFrame, then events, then window opened. So this method will be executed when we start the application. What I want to do here is to read the file that contains the data of our table and to fill the table. So let's do this. Let's add the required imports. So this is the data that we obtained from the file. We need to add it to the table. Now we can modify the title of the G-frame and we can provide it with a minimum size. So let's select the G-frame, then let's modify the title property. So I will call it dashboard. Also, let's suppose that this is the minimum size of the window. So let's find this current size. So this is the current size. I need just to copy it and let's paste it in the minimum size. Now let's hit enter. Let's go back to our source code and let's run our application. So this is the obtained window. It has this appearance and we can modify this appearance by modifying the source code. So let's close it. Let's go to the main method. And here we can remove this part of the source code. Now let's run the application again. And this is the new appearance. Now let's add a new user. So let's click on add without providing any value. And we obtain this error message. Now let's provide a new client. And let's click on add. So this user has been added to this table. We can also increase the width of this window and we can increase its height. Also, to modify any value from this table, we have just to make double click on the value. Now let's modify the text and let's hit enter. Now let's add a new user. If I click on clear, these two fields will be clear. Now let's add a new user and let's click on add. Let's add another user. So to remove a user, I have just to select it and to click on delete. And we can see that the row has been deleted. If I click on delete without selecting any row, I will obtain this error. Now let's click on OK. And if I close this application, the data will be saved in a file. So let's close the application and let's run it again. So this time we can see that this table is not empty because we filled it from a file. You can download the source code of this application from the link that you can find in the description. Finally, thank you very much for watching and please subscribe to the channel.